Hi there, students. Thank you for being part of this presentation. We are looking at U.S. History Semester A today, and our focus is Unit 2, the Foundation of the United States, and we are actually going to be doing the unit activity, the Foundation of the United States. Please make sure that you are reading everything, all the directions before you answer any questions here. Make sure that you read the introduction. Make sure that you read the evaluation process. This will get you the best grade possible. Take your time. Don't be rushing through this activity. Make sure that you're taking your time. Make sure that you're seeing what particular components of your work will get you the best grade possible. There's nothing wrong with you taking extra time to make sure that you're being successful here. And this is task 1, which is the Boston Massacre. Let's read what you're being asked to do here. The Boston Massacre is an important event in the period just before the American Revolution. On March 5th, 1770, 5 colonists were killed by British soldiers in the streets of Boston. This incident increased tensions between the colonists and the British government, bringing each other closer to the beginning of war. This engraving, we're talking about this here, of the Boston Massacre is the famous patriot Paul Revere. Use the image and your own knowledge of the period to answer the questions below, writing about 3 to 4 sentences for each response. And by the way, you also are, I highly encourage to look at all of these articles here, these links here, as they all provide you with enough information to be successful while you're doing this activity. I know it takes time and some of you may be rushing through this, but taking time and doing a good job makes your work be outstanding and your teacher will not return it. Let's move on. Part A. Describe the imagery of the engraving and note any specific details you find. Here, your main job is to observe. You're an observant here. You have, to the right here, you have a whole bunch of British soldiers, and to the left here, you have American colonists. By the way, this image could be misleading depending on who actually did it, and in this case it was an American colonist that did the image, and that could mean that the author may have been biased. But in this case, based on what we see here, you see British soldiers actually firing and killing American colonists. As you can see here, you see blood here. So make sure that you are providing your best interpretation of this particular image. Let's move on. Part B. When and where did the engraving first appear? Does this influence the meaning? Please make sure that you find out. If you're unsure as to where the image appeared or when it appeared, look online. Do some research. And you will have answers here. And please make sure you answer the second part. Depending on when or where it appeared, does it really influence the meaning of the image? If it does, yes. Explain why. If it doesn't, well, explain why also. Part C. What was Revere's main purpose in producing this piece of, in this case, material, content? What was he trying to accomplish? Well, maybe he was trying to tell the American colonists that Britain was no longer needed in the country. So you need to provide a good response here. You should have at least 3 to 5 good sentences here to explain your thoughts about the question. Part D. Compare and contrast the colonial and British perception of the Boston Massacre on Revere's engraving. Here, basically, you need to have at least 2 paragraphs here in which you compare first of all, what happened, everything that took place, how was this basically perceived, and did the colonists accept this? Did the British accept this? What was the British story behind this? What was the American story behind this? You can actually do 1 paragraph for the British story and you can do 1 paragraph for the American story. And guess what? That will help you get the best grade possible. Please make sure that if you're using outside sources, you're not copying, but you're being truthful with yourself and your teacher, because if the teacher finds out you were being in a way dishonest by copying and pasting, he or she will return the work back to you. Part E. Why might this image be interpreted as propaganda? Well, first of all, you need to define what propaganda is. Once you know what propaganda is, then you can go back and say, was this image just trying to sell an image of putting the British in a bad situation? Or was it true what happened in terms of the British soldiers firing at the colonists? I don't know. You need to tell me that in your own words. Let's move on to the next part of this activity. Task 2. Causes and effects of the American Revolution. And let's read what it's asking you to do here. A historian's job is to study the past. This means that a historian must think about the causes and effects of historical events, as well as people's reactions or interpretations of the event. For this task, you'll need to think like a historian and research the causes or effect of historical events. Focus your research on one of these two steps, or topics in this case. How did religion play a role as a cause of the American independence movement and subsequent revolution? How did the documents and ideals of the American Revolution, particularly the Declaration of Independence, speak to all people, including women and African slaves? How did these ideals clash with the reality of gender inequality and slavery? Once you have decided on a topic, conduct research or to find resources that provide evidence to support your position. A few sources on how you can conduct your research have been provided for you in the resource sections below. You'll use the resources to find your notes and your knowledge to write a short 250 to 500 word essay that answers the questions you selected. Using what you know about research, examine your resources. You can click on this link and it will definitely help you. For each source, you may need to do research online to answer these questions. Who authored the document? What is the purpose of the document? When was the document written? What significant historical event or movement does the document represent? Next, you'll need to read each of the sources critically while thinking about these questions. What is the credibility of the source? Is there any noticeable bias? How does the author form his or her argument? What are the important themes, main ideas, and arguments presented in this document? Finally, refer to the notes, the provided documents, write a short essay using the author date system. Make sure you click on this to know exactly what the author date system means. Make sure you provide parenthetical in-text citation for any information you use from outside sources. When you have finished, reread your essay to check for all of the points above, and then proofread to be sure your work does not contain errors in grammar or spelling. These sources will help you write your essay. Here, please make sure that you read these sources here, and make sure that if you have questions to ask your teacher. But we are looking here for a 5-paragraph essay because we're looking at least 500 words, or in this case 250 to 500 words. So a 4 to 5 paragraph essay should be enough here to get your teacher to give you the best grade possible. Make sure that you're using all of the information, make sure that you're answering the questions here, and make sure that you're being honest. If you use outside resources from the internet, make sure that you are not copying and pasting, but instead that you are using your own words to describe what happened, and that you should be doing very well if you do what I'm asking from you right now. And this is basically the end of this unit activity. Make sure that if you have questions again, ask your teacher, and I will talk to you in the next tutorial.